Welcome back, y'all, and happy Friday. Today, we're going to be recapping day one of the 2025 NFL Combine for our Tennessee Volunteers. Y'all, please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out significantly. It's free. It takes you a split second, and again, it really helps us out. So thank you so much for all that y'all are doing. And also, man, this is going to be a very busy weekend for us as Tennessee fans. Obviously, today, our baseball team is starting a tournament. I believe it's going to be in Houston, and today we're playing up against Oklahoma State. I think that game starts at about 4:05. Then tomorrow we have Rice, and then on Sunday we're going to have Arizona. So this is going to be our first real test, so we can see how good this team actually is. And I checked the stats on Monday. I believe that we were the number one team with home runs. We had 20 at that point. I think that we might have a player that's got like the highest batting average, like batting 600, and then Liam is leading the nation in strikeouts, or at least he was, with 25. So there's a whole lot of talent on this team, and we'll be breaking that down more. We might talk about the game tonight after that's over with. And then obviously we have a really big basketball game for our men's basketball team tomorrow versus Alabama. And that game starts at 4. So the baseball game starts at, I believe, 12:05. By the time that one's done, the basketball game should be getting started. And then we also have the NFL Combine, which will be day 3. So we're going to have more players going out and, running and doing all that type of stuff, working out for day 3. And that's going to be it for us. But I do want to get into just some of my thoughts on, what Tennessee did day 1. And we will pull this up right here, and we'll talk about the first player that I think did a phenomenal job yesterday, and that is going to be Big E, Elijah Simmons. So he came in at 6'1", 333 pounds, 334 pounds, and man, his arm size 32 3/4. So I think that's pretty good length. His hand size over 10 inches, so 10 inches and a quarter. He's graded out at a 6.0. As far as what he did with his numbers, we told you that the running stuff didn't matter too much. 5.37 40. That's definitely not great. His 10-yard split, 1.88. I mean, that's pretty good. I would like for him to have been closer to like 1.7 something. So if he was maybe like 1.80, that would have looked better. His vert was outstanding, 32 inches. And then his broad was also pretty good for his size, 8 feet, 10 inches. So, he did some nice things, I think, just as far as, run around out there. And, I don't think that his time stuff, it's not going to matter too much for him. What teams would want Big E for is to be that guy that can take up multiple blocks. So you want him for his strength. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want him to be able to clog up running lanes and all. You're not really getting him as a pass rusher. You're getting him as a space eater, as a block eater. I think that he showed that, but he also looked good going through all of his, on the field drills and things like that. He shows really good quickness and burst. The biggest thing for me with all of Tennessee's players that we've seen go so far is the way that they, operate like they're stop to start. It just looks a lot more fluid than everybody else. So that's got to be a big shout out to, our strength team. Obviously, they're going to have their own probably personal trainers that they're going to work with before they go to these combines. But, I mean, you got to have some sort of a base to it, and their base is definitely better than most teams. So I think that we're fine there. That's something that a lot of folks have been asking. How is our strength team doing? I have thought pretty much since they've been here that they're doing a really good job. But so Big E, man, very, very powerful. And you see him going through this drill. Look at that. Boom. I mean, the power that he uses, he kind of slipped there. That's the other thing that I did notice. All of our players, maybe outside of James Pearce, they were slipping around too much. I saw some of that in some of our games. I want to say it might have been versus Florida, but we just kept on slipping around. So that's something that we do need to get figured out. Get them cleats right, because we can't be doing that. But so anyway, I love what I saw from Big E. I'm not quite sure where he's going to get drafted at, but he will get drafted. I would say, probably on day 2 or 3, probably on day 3, more towards the end of the draft. But he's a guy that, once they get to do the bench and all that stuff today, that's where he's going to show up at. And I said it before that I feel like he could actually break the, record of 44 reps, which we haven't seen since, we haven't seen that since 2020. But I also feel like he might be able to get, maybe that 49 reps, you know what I'm saying, which we have not seen, since 2017 or something like that. So really, really good play. I think that he did, I think that he made himself some money yesterday. Now, the next player that we're going to talk about that I also think did a good job, and, he probably could have done a little bit more, but I want to talk about Omarr Norman-Lott. I would have loved to have seen him go out and actually run his 40. And I think that the fastest 40 for the tackles was like a 4.88. And just in watching what he did out there, I think that he probably would have ran better than that. But you can see he came in at about 6'2", which was close to what he measured in at with the Senior Bowl, and he came in at 291 pounds. So he was 290, I think, 5 before, and he dropped a few pounds just to look better out there and all of that. I think that his arm length is definitely going to show up. That looks good. Hand size also very, very good. And, let me see, his vert, 31 inches. I think that's really good for his size. His broad jump 9.5. I think that's also pretty good. It's not outstanding, but those numbers would probably be slightly over the average. But watching him go through all the on the field workouts, what I loved is, again, you could tell that he's a really good athlete. To me, he looked by far the best athlete out of all of the tackles that did, run through all these, drills and things like that. He got off to a little bit of a slow start, but you can tell that he does have that speed. He does have that burst. So my whole thing with him is I wish that he would have ran his 40 just because if he did, we're talking about James Pearce, who we're going to get to here in just a minute with a great time. And then you would also have Omarr Norman-Lott, just as far as the tackles go, probably would have also had the fastest time inside of that group. So I think that he probably would have ran 4.7, maybe 4.6. He's one of those guys that such a freaky good athlete. And I also think that he could help himself out with his bench press. His bench press is going to be really strong. That was one of the knocks that I've seen with Omarr Norman-Lott is they're wondering, is he going to be strong enough at the point of contact? But for me and for us as ball fans that have watched him play, we know that's a total non-factor. I've seen him take on double teams and not get moved an inch. I've seen him beat blocks with speed, with power, with everything that you would want. He's a prototype 3. So I think that once he does run his 40, his draft stock is going to skyrocket. But I think even just watching him run around today, yesterday, we got a pretty good glimpse at what Omarr Norman-Lott can do. Let's get to this chat right here from Carlos Negro saying, get it, volunteers. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, man, I think that everyone played, I think that everyone ran and looked really good yesterday. So let's get into James Pearce, because I know a lot of folks are wondering, you might not be wondering what my thoughts are on it, but I can tell you, I think that he definitely helped himself out yesterday. Okay. Just came in 6'5", 245 pounds. That's what he was. I think that was his listed size for, maybe since he was like a junior, something like that. So he did gain that weight from his junior to his senior season. He was able to hold on to it, but he just looked so smooth and so fluid with it. So he probably played over that. I think he probably plays around 250, maybe slightly over 250, probably about 253. That's his real playing weight. But I mean, you want to talk about a guy that just looks the part, running through all of his drills for sure. We're about to get into that. So 4.47, that's the second fastest time up to this point. Now the NFL Combine starts up again today at 3 o'clock. And it's going to be cornerback, so that record, that time is going to get shattered. But the only player that ran faster than James Pearce was a linebacker. And I think he was like 225, and he only ran faster by 100th of a second. So, he ended up running a 4.46, so barely faster than what James Pearce did. As far as, Pearce compared to all the other linemen, it's not even close. So looks good there. His 10-yard split was excellent. 1.56, that looks really, really good. That's going to be up there with some of the fastest ones that, even with the linebackers and things like that. But his vert, man, his vert could have been better. So 31 inches, you would think that a guy like this that runs as fast as, James Pearce does with a really quick first step, I think that his vert really should have been 35 plus inches, but that's probably not going to be a huge deal because he runs so fast. He looks good once you cut that film on. And then his broad jump 10.3, that's pretty good for him. Would have liked for it to have been, 10.5 and up, really 10.8 and up. I mean, again, for an athlete like this, that's what you would anticipate he would have done. But this is him running his 40 and running it, man, with that hoodie on. I don't think that this was a great look necessarily. It looks good that he was able to run a 4.47 with the hoodie on, because I'm going to tell you that hood, that's going to slow you down. Okay. I promise you that. That's going to slow you down. I would say at least 0.5 of a second, at least. You see it kind of flopping inside the wind. That's almost like a little parachute. So that was a bad deal for him from that perspective. But it also doesn't look good that, he told somebody that he just, left his actual, his real shirt, his real Combine shirt inside of his room. That doesn't look good, especially when people are already kind of hitting towards him, having some off the field issues. So if he would have actually worn that shirt, I think that he would have been low 4.4, probably a 4.3 guy. Should he run his 40 one more time? If I was him, I might consider it just because, you might have some other players that didn't participate, that didn't run their 40s yesterday. They could get a faster time than James Pearce. If he goes from a 4.4, anything to a 4.3, he made himself millions of dollars. I promise you. If he breaks into the 4.3 range, I think that he would be the first defensive lineman taken, just because it's too many positive traits for an edge rusher that James Pearce shows. Now, this is where I think he really lit the whole combine up, was in the on the field drills. Dude, you want to talk about just flawless movements? I mean, he almost looks like a secondary player. Really, he looks more like how the linebacker should have looked going through that. And yeah, he did technically play linebacker with Tennessee last season. Leo, for us, that's an outside linebacker, but that's our edge rusher. And he did drop into coverage some. So he's showing everything that you're looking for right here. You're seeing how he measures up, versus all these other players that played in the Super Bowl last season, faster than two of them. And he's right there behind Saquon Barkley, who was the best running back in the league last season. Stuff like that, man, that's huge for us as Tennessee fans. It's huge for all the other players that are entering into this year's draft and for the pretty much foreseeable future, right? Because Byron Young comes in. He's a guy that wasn't on too many people's radar. Comes in and he ran a 4.43. Things like that goes a long way. And also Byron Young is doing a great job inside of the NFL. So all of this stuff is just going to help us out tremendously. But again, just going back to his on the field stuff, I mean, absolutely beautiful, absolutely flawless, A++++. So he might not necessarily really need to go run his 40 again, but I would say that's just based off of what he did, he definitely made himself plenty of money. But if he does, say, hey, at this pro day, I'm just gonna run my 40, maybe try to redo his vert, because he could have done better with that, for sure. Get those numbers up, and I mean, he should be like a top 15 draft pick, like no questions asked. And I'm one of the people that kind of felt like all the off the field stuff that people were mentioning, I think that that's some, teams trying to get his draft stock lower so that they can pick him up. But I don't see him dropping past, like I said earlier, I don't see him dropping past my Falcons at number 15. He's not going to drop past that unless he just does something really stupid. So, I would say just stay out of the way. I wouldn't even go out. Like, just stay inside of the house, work out, train, so that you don't get into any type of trouble. Not to say that he's a troublemaker, but just don't even take that risk all the way up until this draft. And James Pearce is going to be absolutely fine, right? So I think that he did a phenomenal job. All of our guys did a phenomenal job. But that's pretty much it for my thoughts. Let me see what everyone else is saying right here. Let me get to some of y'all's thoughts. So from Carlos Negros is saying, I think we gave JP roles this past season when he couldn't show his pure talent. Hopefully he gets to ball and show what he can do. Yeah, so I think that we did a good job of showing his versatility, right? There were some times when I did feel like we probably should have used him as a pass rusher more and dropped him into coverage less. But at the end of the day, it probably does benefit him. Now, for me, those thoughts was more to help this team out. And I mean, he had the highest pressure rate out of any player, I think, in college, period, last season. So that says a whole lot. The one thing that James Pearce, I wish, would have done a little bit better job with, just with the film stuff, is being able to close. So getting pressure is big, and you'll hear pro coaches, you'll hear college coaches all talking about it's not always just about getting those sacks. You want to impact that quarterback, get him off of his spot. And I feel like James Pearce does a great job with that. But there's also something to be said about closing. There's something, to be said about the numbers that you put up. And, I think that he probably could have been a double-digit sack guy. I would actually say that based off of the system and the team that he goes to next season, he could be a double-digit sack guy from day one, because it's not just about that first step. It's not just about that speed, but it's also, I think, about kind of having some secondary pass rush moves. And, James Pearce is not just a speed guy. He's also a strong guy. So, as we talked about with Big E and with Omarr Norman-Lott, same thing with James Pearce. His bench press test that they're going to do at some point today, I was hoping that could have been done before we started this video. But if he looks good with that bench press, that's also going to help his draft stock out. So he's in a situation where I think that there's a ton of buzz with him. And he really just needs to capitalize off of that at this point. I'm sure that plenty of teams will probably start to reach out to him if they can. I don't know what the rules are and all that type of stuff as far as when can teams talk to these players. I feel like it's kind of open season. So he's probably going to get a whole lot of interviews and things like that. He just needs to make sure that he's got the correct answers to those questions. And, I think that a lot of times what the teams are going to be looking for is just being honest and just being real. And James Pearce strikes me as a guy that he's just him. So I don't think he's going to too much struggle with that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I think we've got 3 guys that we just talked about that went yesterday that will all end up getting drafted. Like I said about Omarr Norman-Lott. He's a guy that I could see second round. If he gets into, we'll call it like 4 or 6 range, he could potentially be a first round guy. So feeling really, really good. I just wish that he would have ran it, because that would have, this kind of added to that cachet with all of our Vols players, because, again, I think that everyone did a really, really nice job. So from Scotty Vols, it's saying, thank you for your videos. Love your breakdowns. Thank you so much for that, man. We put a lot of work into it. Me and P, and we spend a whole lot of hours trying to put together these shows for y'all. So we appreciate y'all so much. You know what I'm saying? Just thank y'all for tuning in. Again, just make sure to like for us and all of that good stuff, because that goes a very, very long way. From James Westbrook is saying, who do you think can raise their draft stock the most during this combine? So I want to talk about the other players that we're going to have participating tomorrow. So let's get into that, because I think that that's a good way to segue into your question. And we'll start off right here with Dylan Sampson, who obviously, man, close to 1,500 yards last season. He was the leading rusher in the SEC, broke Tennessee's all-time rushing touchdown record with 22. He broke off just several records. He's been doing that since he was in high school. His character is just like off the charts good. So that's a very positive thing. I think that he possesses all the tools necessary, and y'all can kind of see what they're saying about him, just as far as, some of the breakdowns that they have with him. But right now, his draft grade is a 6.36. So, that's kind of like a guy that you feel like is going to be good in a couple of years. But for me, looking at his size, that might be one of the biggest things, because that is one of the questions on him is, does he have the size to be durable enough to carry the load that he did at Tennessee? Now, that's one of the questions that literally, if y'all go to NFL Combine or NFL.com/combine, whatever this website is with all the combine stuff, y'all can see the full breakdown on it. And that's one of the questions that they ask. Now, for me, that's a stupid question, because he did it. Like, you saw him do it. He carried the football 258 times last year, averaged over 5 yards per carry in the toughest league to do that in. We haven't seen anybody do that in a long time. So obviously he can carry that load. So that was just dumb to me. But it is still a question. Will he come in at 5'10"? I think that he's probably going to be a shade up under 5'10" and probably close to 200 pounds. He needs to be over 200 pounds. And, I would say 201 would probably be perfect. But if he comes in at 205, that could be good, just to kind of show, hey, I can get up to 205, maybe even more than that, just to show that he can add that weight. But the biggest thing, or I think one of the biggest things for Dylan Sampson, is going to be how he tests. What's his 40 time going to be? I think that he could help himself out tremendously. And a lot of stuff has changed with this season's draft. What we've seen is, I've seen some mock drafts with like two, maybe 3 running backs going in the first round. I don't know when the last time is that's happened. I think you might have to go back to like the 90s, maybe even the 80s. So this is a very heavy running back draft class. And if it was any other season, like if this was last year, and if this was the same Dylan Sampson, he might be a first round pick, or he might be the first running back taken overall. So I'm saying all those things just to say, I think that the way that Dylan Sampson tests, next to some of the other players that they have rated higher than Dylan Sampson, could definitely help him out. Because, again, whenever you cut that tape on, there's not too many flaws in his game. One of my biggest things personally was that he didn't hold on to the football well. I hate that for him, because he's such a good kid. This was the worst season for him to, have a case of the fumbles, but he did. That is a really bad look. That's like one of the last things that you ever want to put out on film. But outside of that, running the football, inside, outside, I think he looks really good there. He shows that burst, shows the toughness and the balance, the jump cuts. I think he did a much better job in pass pro than he's done in some of the previous years. That's probably going to be like another one of the questions that he's going to have to answer. And he might have to show some of that, going through some of these combine drills at his pro day. Teams will probably want to put him through some like personal workouts. I'm sure that the pass blocking stuff is going to be a really big part of it. But also, he didn't catch the football coming out of the backfield as much this year. That was another knock that I've seen. That's not his fault. But Dylan Sampson can definitely catch the ball. Now, it was one time that I remember it was like a little dump off that he did drop. But outside of that, we know that he's going to look really good with all this stuff. But I am expecting for Dylan Sampson to, with no questions asked, whether he comes in at 210, 215, 220, he's a 4-4 guy. He's a true track guy. So he's going to be sub 4.5 for sure. That's going to put him, I would say, within the top probably, 5 to 10% of all the running backs that run at this year's combine. But if he can if he can get into those 4.3s, then yeah, I think that he has a chance to really help his draft stock out significantly. But I wouldn't even say that he would be the guy that I feel like has the best chance to increase his draft stock, because he's already got like a second round grade on him at this point. So it would be tough for him to move up into the first round. Everything that he does moving forward would have to pretty much be perfect. So the next player, right? We could talk about Bru. So Bru, he was at 6'3". Is that six? Yeah, he was at 6'2", close to 6'3", 215 pounds. That's coming from the Senior Bowl. And, I think that he's going to run well. I think he's going to be a sub 4.5 guy too. That's going to help him out tremendously. Right now, his draft grade is not very high. And there's a lot of folks that have been saying that this isn't a deep, this is not a deep wide receiver draft class. I kind of disagree. I wouldn't say that it's a bunch of, I don't think that we're going to have a bunch of like Hall of Fame guys in this draft class, but I think that there's a lot of really good wide receiver talent inside of this class. So it's going to be tough for Bru to get his stock up as much as he would probably want to, but testing well is always going to help, just because, he's a guy that, again, his character is going to be pretty much flawless. He's a guy that he might have had like one or two issues back at SC. And of course, these scouts, they're going to find all that stuff. So I don't even know how serious any of those issues were. Either way, he's been the perfect teammate. He's a guy that everyone in the locker room looks up to. Whenever you listen to the coaches talk about him, sounds like some of them kind of look up to him too, right? So that sort of character can help him out tremendously. And, I also think, looking at guys like Jennings that came from Tennessee, I would say he's a very similar player to Bru. I don't know who would be the better athlete. I actually feel like before Bru's knee injury, he probably was the better athlete. And, Bru played last year at like 230 pounds. So cutting down 15 pounds, I think that he looked a lot faster at the Senior Bowl. Is he going to test well? Can he get into the lower 4.4s? If he gets there, I think that he will get drafted, just because as far as the blocking, as far as the gadget piece that you can use him as far as making those tougher catches. And, you just know that he's a guy that's going to do all of the right things to help your team win. Someone will take a chance on him, I'd say, from maybe like the 4th, 5th rounds and after that. So he can definitely get his draft stock up more at this point, because he's probably going to be an undrafted free agent. But if you cut that film on, I'm going to always go back to that film, because that's where things really matter at. You're going to see Bru making big catch in big moments, back to back several times, dragging people and just being a total dog, being a football player. So I think that he could add a whole lot of value. He's a guy that you could also, say, hey, listen, you got down to 215, but we want you back up to about 230, and we want you to be like a Brock Bowers type, and we're going to let you play, some end fours. Now, listen, Brock Bowers and Bru are about the same size. Okay, and Bru's faster than Brock is. Now, Brock didn't test. He didn't test because he probably would have ran like a 4.6, 4.7. I don't think that Bru's going to run that slow. So I think that he can add a whole lot of value, but I wouldn't even say that he's the guy that would be able to get his draft stock up the most. If I had to pick a guy that I feel like is probably going to, have his draft stock increase the most, and not just for Tennessee, but maybe out of anybody inside of this draft, it is Dante Thornton. Because 6'5", 214 pounds, I think that's what he measured in at that East-West Shrine Bowl. So right now, he's graded out at a 6.1. So I actually graded higher than Bru. And I think that most sites, most mock drafts have him as an undrafted free agent. But this is a guy that ran 23 miles per hour. Okay, so 23 miles per hour is blazing fast, and the fastest player that's going to be running in these combines, or that even got the invite to any of these combines, was at 23.1. So if you look at the average top speed, not Bru, but Dante is actually the fastest. So I think his average top speed is like 25.5 miles per hour. And just to kind of give you a point of reference, I want to say that Worthy, who ran that 4.21 last year, I think that his average top speed was like 22.5, or it was something in that ballpark. Now, that's not to say that I feel like Dante is going to run a 4.21, because the 40 is not made like that. It's not about who's the fastest. It's about who can get the best start, who has the best form running it. But Dante will test very well, because he's another guy. He's a true runner. I think that he's another track guy. So he's going to be able to run it well. That's something else that I didn't touch on with James Pearce. But man, he didn't run it like he looked very smooth running his 40. But there were some times when he kind of weaved over. That's going to take some time off. There was also I think on the first one, I don't think that he finished that one. You know, he didn't run all the way through. So little stuff like that could have helped him out to get into the 4.3s. But Dante, I would say he's going to be, you know, top 3 fastest wide receivers. And at this size, yeah, he's going to turn a lot of heads. Now, he was also Tennessee's leading wide receiver last season. He was our most consistent guy. One of the knocks on him is that he's just a vertical threat. They said, well, he doesn't look great, you know, running his digs and stuff. He's rounding it off. Well, I mean, you know, I don't know what year these people are living in who's talking about like you round digs off now. Okay. Like, you know, and then outs too. Like you can run, there's different versions of running outs where it's not, you don't have to stop and then make a perfect, you know, cut. You can round it off because it's not so much about any of that. So, you know, P and I, you know, we've got our other channel that we do all the national stuff on. So we've watched plenty of film on all the wide receivers. And I think that Dante's routes look just as good than, you know, as anybody else. It looks better than most people's routes because most of these guys aren't running what most people would consider to be the crispest route. So I think that he's going to look really, really good. You know, my thing is, I'm just hoping that he does run at the combine, and I'm also hoping that he, you know, isn't nervous out there. I hope that he doesn't have any drops because in 2023 that was one of his problems, right? Like he dropped the football a lot. Something else about Dante is inside-outside guy. Tennessee let him play slot and outside, so that type of versatility with this size, with this speed, he's a guy that I think could go from being an undrafted free agent to second, third round, literally, like just off of one day of work. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully all those things do happen because I'm definitely cheering for all of our guys. I know that y'all know that. So let me get to some more of these chats because I did see that some more came in. Let's see right here from Carlos Negros is saying, any guess on where Dylan might go? Yeah, I think that Dylan's probably going to be a second rounder. I think he's second round, possibly third. It is really all, you know, it's going to be based off of how the entire draft plays out because every team has their needs, but whenever teams start to make those runs, excuse me. So like if teams start to make a run on backs early, then what we're going to see is Dylan Sampson would probably go earlier because people would start to get scared. So but I would say that he should definitely go in the second round, third round at the absolute latest. That's where I'm at with Dylan Sampson. And I think, again, that he could get up into that first round because he's going to test well and he's going to interview very, very, very well. Those types of things go a very, very long way to these, to these franchises. He's a guy that will put that work in. So I think that he's going to be fine. I think that all of our guys will be fine. Let me see. What else? We got another one coming in right here from my dog, D. Taylor, saying working, just checking. Go Big Orange and saying that James Pearce looked phenomenal yesterday. Yeah, thank you so much for chiming in, D. Always good to hear from you. Yeah, but I think that he's going to be fine. And also, I'm curious. Does anybody want to talk some about Ricky Gibson? Just because I actually saw this last night on VolQuest. It sounds like he might be participating in spring practice with us. Now, I think that that's pretty interesting. You know, I think that says a lot about what he's doing. And this is something that, you know, I tried to touch on in the previous video when I was talking about him. I think that his whole deal is that obviously he's using his leverage to get more money. I don't think that he wants to leave Tennessee. I think that the staff wants to keep him. And I understand everyone's, I understand being frustrated with the situation because it is a very frustrating situation. But I think that the staff is going to, I think that they're going to get it figured out. So it feels like, you know, he hasn't taken down any of his Tennessee stuff from his social media pages. So I think that he will end up with Tennessee, and we're going to be a lot better with him than we will be without him. I know that some people have kind of thrown out some other names that can maybe step up, but I think that what people overlook is that cornerback is so important to a team. It is critical. If you have, one guy, okay, just one guy, which will be Ricky Gibson at this point. Well, I guess it would be two because we also have Bru. So we have two guys, and I'm talking about Bru still playing at start, but two guys who we know can play true lockdown man-to-man coverage. We don't really have anybody else on this team, y'all, that can do that. I haven't seen it yet. Now, there's players from last season that will be back this year. They could have gotten significantly better. That's definitely possible. But I think even from watching their high school film, we had guys that were freshmen last season that are going to be sophomores or redshirt freshmen this year, second-year guys that looked good playing man, but I think everyone that we brought in the 2024 class, pretty much outside of Boo, there were more. Well, I would say Marcus Gorey. He's another one that looks pretty good playing man. Didn't see that too much on his high school film. I saw that more from his college film. But we have more zone corners right now. The entire defense has to change. If you don't have guys on the outside that can play man-to-man coverage, the whole defensive scheme changes like significantly. So it's a very, very, very big deal to make sure that we can hold on to the guys that can play that man, until we get our best cornerback back, right? Because then we're going to have three guys that shut down man-to-man coverage. And, excuse me, I disagree with some of the thoughts that Ricky Gibson isn't, some people are saying, that he's average. Ricky Gibson is one of the best cornerbacks in the entire country. Like, he's going to be projected probably first round in next year's draft. We're going to have two cornerbacks that will be projected to be first rounders next season. Like, they're really, really good. And I just think that people are overlooking that. So it is a situation where Tennessee does need to do whatever, I think, where we need to do whatever we can to hold on to him. But like I said, too, maybe some of these freshmen step up. And I don't know how much the staff has been able to see with these guys. I know that when I was in school, when you were doing like the preseason workouts and stuff, the actual football staff could not be out there. Yeah, it was just those trainers. Could be totally different now. So maybe they've seen it. I'm sure that they've been watching the film on it. I'm sure they can do that. So maybe they have a good idea of, hey, we've got some guys that we think is going to look really good playing man-to-man. But you never know until they actually start to play football. So I'm just saying, for me, that's a situation I would most definitely like to try to hold on to him. But let me see what y'all got to say about that. So this one's from Andre Love, and he's saying that Watson Brown said they should evaluate him during spring and pay him accordingly, NFL style. Hey, that's something else. That's an excellent point, because the only thing about it, right? So number one, we are kind of speculating that he will be participating in spring camp, but that would be perfect for Tennessee. Yeah, I would say, okay, we're going to take a look at you first. And then if we got some guys that look better, that's a great situation that Tennessee's in, because now you say, well, look, we got that money. But if we don't feel like if we feel like we feel like we have someone better than you, then we're just going to, pay them, or we're going to, pay them less, or maybe just like a little bit more than what they were already getting. And then we're going to go out to the portal and add somebody else. So, yeah, I think that's another good thing. And I know a lot of folks was upset that Ricky Gibson came out at this point, but I've said from Jump Street, it's better that he did it at this point, because that gives us a lot more time to get things figured out. So I think that's another part of Ricky Gibson really trying to help this team out. The only reason that you would go public with this is if he's already tried to get it worked out, without having to go public, and the staff wasn't really budging just yet. So now you got to basically put them on Front Street and kind of force their hand. So you don't love it, but that's just how things are going to be played out now. That's just what college football is. So I mean, if we want to win championships, we got to be able to do this type of stuff, because there's other teams that will most definitely play ball. So we just got to figure out, do we want a team full of people that absolutely just, hey, we don't care, we're going to come play for Tennessee for free, and we don't win any ball games. Like, we get killed by everybody, right? So you got to find that perfect balance. All right, so next from my dog D, saying that there is a rumor that one of the freshman cornerbacks coming in is a beast. Can't figure out who, though. Yeah, man, I think that we've got really everyone that we brought in that freshman class. I like all of them. I told y'all about Top. I think that he's going to be really special, just because he's got something that you can't coach. You can't teach size. Like, you can't teach length. And he's a guy that I'm telling you, man, he's got to be about 6'3". He might still be growing. He might end up being 6'4". His wingspan has got to be 6'6". So really long arms, and I think that he's got the proper footwork and the hips and all of that. He understands football on a really high level, so I love his game. I think that Dylan Lewis is a guy who, man, his coverage skills look really good. So for me, Dylan Lewis is more of a man-to-man cover corner. Something that I just don't really feel like Tennessee got a lot of in 2024, but that's a really good look. I think that, excuse me, I think that with how football is being played, with the different schemes, with all the option games and things, like, you want to be able to play man in as many spots as possible, because then, you don't have to worry about, the quarterback reading your linebackers and said, okay, if this linebacker bites up, then now I'm going to be able to throw it and it's open, right? Like, you take away so many options whenever you can play man. So we're doing a much better job there. I think that the other cornerback, Trey, he looks really good. I think that he's a, man-to-man cover corner, probably I don't know if he would be more of a star player or more of an outside corner, but I think that he could do both. So there's plenty of, there's plenty of versatility. Sounds like Christian Charles is a guy that might miss some of spring, so that's going to suck. And that's one of the other things too, is that Tennessee is just so banged up inside of our secondary. A lot of folks are going to be missing, but it will at least give us the opportunity to see how these younger players look. Whole point here, y'all, is I don't know what freshmen they were talking about, but it could have been any of them. It could end up being all of them. In a situation like that, do you want to let Ricky Gibson go? I personally wouldn't, because I think that he's, I think that the more cover guys that you have on a team, or you're not even on a team, but, playing a sport where people get injured, you're going to lose some guys. You want to have that depth. Tennessee could be in a really good spot if we can hold on to Ricky Gibson. All right, let me see. Next one right here from Andre Love is saying that we've been on our defensive coordinator's case. Seems like even though he has good results. Yes, for sure. How do you feel about Halsley and his input? So Halsley, for me, man, I don't know how much of the offensive play calling and stuff is from Halsley. I don't know how much of that is from Coach Heupel, but I will say that from 2022 to 2023, we took a step back. From 2023 to 2024, we took another step back. And I think that that's more so with the way that we're calling plays, with the way that we're setting things up. Now, I've seen some situations where we did a really good job of scheming things up, and that was versus UGA. I think that our game plan, just the offense as a whole, how we ran the football, how we threw the football, everything. I think that was masterful. If y'all go back and watch that opening drive versus UGA, that was a masterclass, dude. And I think that was Heupel. So if Halsley is the one that's been calling some of these other plays, then yeah, he needs to figure some stuff out. And that's why, I love that we go out and, add Seth to this staff, as hopefully somebody else that can give us some input into maybe how to call these plays, or like when to call these plays, how to set some things up, because we didn't do nearly a good enough job. Also, man, I want to see Tennessee use our running backs coming out of the backfield a lot more. There's so many different things that we just did not do. It was very basic, and it speaks volumes to how good this team actually was from a talent perspective to make it to the college football playoffs with the schedule that we had, playing in the SEC, and with such a just bland offense for most of the season. So yeah, I would say that I feel like Coach Banks, he let us down in some situations. At least he let me down in some situations, I think, versus some of these bigger teams where it didn't feel like he was blitzing as much. He did blitz a lot, but I just feel like if you're not getting any pressure, then you got to bring as many until you start to get that pressure. So I didn't see enough of that. But if you look at his overall scheme, and we might do a different video just kind of breaking down how our scheme looks on defense. It is so versatile, y'all. Like we flip from base, right? Anytime that you're talking about a base defense, we're talking about 4-3, 3-4, typically could be 4-4. But our base, it could be a 4-3 or it could be a 3-4. We would flip from either one of those mid-play. So that amount of versatility that he's building with this team, it's going to be very difficult for teams to find success versus our defense. It was tough for them to do it last season. We just got to find a way to continue to manufacture pressure, or to always get that pressure. And once we do that, man, our defense will, I think, pretty much like how we did last season, the defense will probably carry us to the playoffs, especially if you're looking forward to 2026, where we're thinking 4 SEC teams will automatically make it. So, there's a lot of positive things I feel like for Tennessee moving forward. But, we have to keep on trucking away. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to keep on showing out. Whenever our guys get to run and do all their stuff on Saturday, hey, this is y'all's chance. You know what I'm saying? This is not just y'all's chance for y'all, but also for the future of this program at different spots. We talked about Tennessee needs to go out and, continue to do a good job of finding good running backs, but also wide receivers. That's another spot. So having more of these wide receivers and running backs getting drafted, putting up really good numbers at the combine, that puts us on the map for some of these kids that might not have even been thinking about Tennessee, right? So there's a whole lot of things coming up, but that's going to be it for this video, y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Hope that y'all do enjoy the rest of y'all's work day. We might be coming back to y'all with some thoughts on the baseball team. I'm hoping that we look as good as we have, facing up against some of these, I guess, like lesser teams, right? This is going to be our first chance to see, are we who we think we are? And I think that Doyle is about to I think he's about to get out here, will and deal. And we'll also see how does Tennessee do on a bigger field. You know, will we be able to hit as many home runs? Because we know Tennessee has one of the smallest stadiums or fields in all of college baseball, man. We going to the big leagues now. So we will see. But that's going to be it, y'all. Please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And we will see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.